Morning, everybody. How we doing today? We're going to listen to a record not too spoken of right now by a guy named Mel Brown. He's a nice guitar player, plenty of blues, grits and gravy. Not the flashiest guy, but I enjoy his style a lot. And I'm reading the liner notes here, and this guy here says Frankowski, some things that I think are important for people to understand. I don't particularly expect that anyone will believe me, but I stoutly maintain that Mel Brooks is a monumental guitar player, and this, his second album under his own name, is a great, nay, wizard recording. The reason for my skepticism stems from the fact that I am paid for this expense of useless verbiage, so presumably my words are suspect. For would Impulse be dispensing their generous corporate largesse for me to badmouth their albums? Not on your life. I hear you mutter absolutely right. I'm a corporate hiring, and like all such, it behooves me to know which side my prose is buttered on. And I think that's one of the issues we have with jazz and the reflecting pool, is that so much of the critique of the music has come from critics who are being paid making a living to do it. And a lot of those guys are great, don't get me wrong, but I think even today's vinyl community and the online YouTube channel community, there's a lot of, I need to make money, so I'm going to say milky things, I'm not going to be controversial, I'm not going to offend people, I'm not going to be honest, I'm just going to praise everything. And I don't think that has any benefit to anyone. You don't have to agree with what I say, but because I've taken a stance on a lot of different sounds, you can measure my words. My words have a value and a weight. And there's people out there that go, oh, he doesn't like that? I might. I probably will like that because he doesn't. If the Jazz Shepherd says it's not that fun to listen to, that's probably something I'm going to dig. That's currency. I've had a few people tell me they've unsubscribed only to come back because they still find value in what I say. And so it's not only beneficial to the people who agree with me, you can disagree with me, but you can still find value in that point because it gives you information that is reliable. I want to be accountable with what I say and be honest with how I feel, and that's just as simple as that, really. We're going to do a 2x2 today. I'll be glad when this damn election cycle's over so we can not have to think about politics and all that mess anymore. I haven't been too engaged in it the last week or so. Work on the house quite a lot. It's ugly when you stick your head up. I touched base with a few old friends last night, and the state of the world right now, it's a crazy place, you know. And who do you believe in? What's there to find strength from? It's a place without a lot of hope at times. And I think for kids growing up, there's nothing more monumental than hope. You need to have hope, to have love, faith, trust. It's all such an important part of looking forward. And when hope is dashed, when hope is on the rocks of despair, and there's just no landing this ship anywhere, that's desperation time. And bad things happen when we lose sight of hope. And I think even kids today, in a lot of our relationships, they don't see mom and dad love each other or stick together through hard times or be totally committed or to be totally honest. And so they grow up with this broken sense of trust. They don't really believe in love. They don't have a strong sense of faith in something as basic as mom and dad. And for me as a kid, my parents stood together through thick and thin. And that's always given me a strong sense of faith that I believe you can be with someone and make it work. And I've seen love firsthand, the commitment of love. And to see trust, honesty, love, commitment, promises kept those are linchpins on the ladder that leads us to hope. When love is not something we believe in, hope is dashed. When trust is not something we've ever experienced, hope is diminished. I encourage people to take the person you love, if you have someone special in your life, and just give them a little extra love tonight. I try to remind myself with my wife that the little moments, that little bit of juice and gravy between the morsels, that's the good times. The things that you take for granted, the trips in a car ride to dinner or to grandma's house, or opening presents around the fire, simply having morning breakfast together, having a cup of coffee, and slowly reflecting without anything kind of deep happening. Those little moments of minutia have a great deal of value, and we need to recognize the magic and the value of the moment within the moment. And as I said a few episodes ago in my little biography episode, I've recognized that the worst times of my life, I only can look back and remember the good things, the good times in that moment, in those bad times. And that means that no matter what I'm going through right now, I'm going to probably remember the good things about this moment. And so if I can slide that recognition of the worth, the value of the moment to the moment itself, I can recognize that I'm always living within a moment that's of value, and that there's something important happening, something someday I might look back and be nostalgic about someday. Something of great value could be unfolding right now, and I'm completely not recognizing or groaning and grunting and complaining. And again, that whole principle of knowing the difference between what I want and what I need definitely comes into play. Commercialization and capitalism wants us to feel unsatiated, so we continue to consume. And not ever having boundaries or understanding the difference between wants and needs keeps us in a consuming cycle that keeps us pretty desperate and pretty hopeless. And again, hope is just kind of the message today. Hope is finding value in the small moments. Hope is keeping your promises. Hope is being a good role model to your youngins. Hope is putting others ahead of yourself some of the time. No one's going to be Christ-like and putting others ahead of themselves at all times. That's just not realistic. But we need to, at times, value others and find empathy for others. And instead of having a disparaging word, share a smile. And I can tell you numerous times in South Minneapolis where a couple of Somali ladies would be walking across the street at a middle of slower gait, and they have their burqas on, their phones tucked in, and they're kind of doing their little walk, and they don't really look at you, make eye contact very often, and they're kind of used to being honked at and cursed at, and so when you do get a chance to see one of them, a simple smile, they smile back in shock. They're like, they can't believe you just smiled at them. Instead of grumbling at their presence here in my country, what are you doing here, blah, blah, blah. People pick up on that stuff. My wife is a very bad face talker. She doesn't say what she feels, but she shows it. And that gets her in trouble at work sometimes. In a subjective role, but also when she's a superior to people, and she gives this look like you're an idiot. Her best look she has is this, why are you still breathing look? And she had this boss that she used to throw that look at in meetings, and she had conflicts with this guy. She couldn't figure out, I never said a bad word to him. And then one day I'm like, but you probably have said a lot of bad things to him through your facial expressions. And then she started checking herself and realizing it's exactly what she was doing. And so it's just sometimes we got to be more positive, put more joy into the world. I spoke to an old friend last night I hadn't spoken to in a few months, probably 6 months, and it was just nice to share some over the phone conversation with a good old friend, a guy I played with in bands for 15 years, maybe longer. Good soul, heart of the earth kind of guys. And he's talking about wanting to do some recording, some music again. And which actually made me wonder if you guys ever want to hear any of the music I've made over the years. I could maybe put it on the end of some of these videos at some point, but that's not where we're going to go with this right now. But Mel Brown's a great player. He's kind of underappreciated. He has this album, a couple albums on Impulse actually, and it's easy to get him confused with Marion Brown, Mel Brown. They're both on Impulse, but two very different players, of course. Definitely got some blues sound to him. Right there, I could play that at a gig all day long. It's just the blues, The blues has a currency all of its own, though. The blues has a great value. So we're not really going to cover this record. I just wanted to put it on while we share it a little bit. First record I want to talk about today, Tone Poet, Grant Green, Born to Be Blue, a record that had an earlier release in the 80s. I think this was one of his first sessions, actually, not his first one. 61, so it's early. Grant Green, of course, is one of a lot of people's favorite players. For good reason. He plays a peppy, bright, light style of guitar. He's on this one here with Sonny Clark, Ike Quebec, Sam Jones, and Louis Hayes. This is during Ike Quebec's resurgence. He's going to pass away sometimes, probably later in this year, if I recall. And Sonny Clark's going to pass away shortly after this as well. Sad. Recorded on March 62 and December 23 of 61. So it's pretty early, and yeah, it's pretty much towards the end of both those guys' lives. But Born to Be Blue, Ike and Grant Green is a match made. And I wish we would have gotten more of that. Whenever I do a Tone Poet, I get pretty strong viewership just putting that in the title. People are obviously out there searching that a lot, and that's great. But in some ways, it's disappointing to me that some modern reissue program that does a great job, and this is not a critique of them, but that one of the most searched words in jazz minds today is Tone Poet. That's a thing they know. And to me, that's kind of sad, because it's such a current thing, and they do a great job. Again, it's not a critique of Tone Poet, but it's just that our language is so diminished in terms of our relationship to jazz that for most people, searching Tone Poet is one of the first things they know about jazz. And it just tells you how sidelined the music has become. They're not searching hard bop, they're not searching jazz history, they're not even searching Prestige, Riverside Blue Note, they're searching Tone Poet, Record Store Day, what's coming out. And at best, Tone Poet sessions are, and most modern reissues of jazz stuff, not the Record Store Day stuff, at best, most of these records are in the top percentages of an artist's catalog, but they're never the artist's best work. Never. The artist's best work has been put out always. A guy like Tina Brooks, since he only had one album issued, those other two albums are important. Minor Movements Back to the Track are important because it expands his catalog greatly. With a guy like Grant Green or Hank Mobley, who has, dozens of records out, you're getting infill and you're getting knowledge, and it's giving you an extra layer. But I strongly tell people, these aren't places to start with these guys. This shouldn't be your first Grant Green, and if it is, that's great. It's a fine place to start on some levels. But it's again, these didn't get put out for a reason, because there was other sessions that were more important. Some of it, of course, comes down to just budgets and record stores' timelines. You know, stuff gets shelved and meant to be released and just never got back to it. But again, if you're going to start Grant Green, and if this was your first Grant Green, go right now to eBay or Discogs or Amazon and buy Idle Moments. Just do it. Buy Idle Moments. The track Idle Moments to me is one of the greatest songs ever put onto vinyl. Hutcherson, Joe Henderson, Duke Pearson, and Grant Green each take these long solos on this blues track called Idle Moments. And Pearson's just a delight. Hutcherson's fantastic. It's Grant Green's golden moment, Idle Moments. It's gorgeous. And it's a whole different level than what we're hearing here in terms of this feels a little bit more loosely thrown together. And Blue Note doesn't really do that, but still this doesn't have that same grandeur of Idle Moments, which feels like a real opus. But again, it's great that Tone Poet's given us this stuff with the great gatefolds, the great photographs from the camera lens of Frank Wolf. It's no means a slight against them. But I've done 2x2s with Tone Poets 2 or 3 times, and they'll get twice the viewing of other 2x2 episodes or episodes on some artists no one knows about. And so I'm guessing this is bringing a lot of new people to the channel, which is fantastic. But I also encourage people, watch the episodes about the guys you don't know about. Because there's a lot to be learned in jazz beyond the surface of Miles Davis, a few Tone Poet reissues. And I find a lot of people's lexicon is very limited to that surface modern perspective. And that's certainly not the depths of the jazz ocean. You know, if you want to be informed and know jazz, you need to know the canon, the material that came out in the era of the LP, especially the 78 era. To be realistic, people aren't going to be able to collect that stuff in the same way. You can buy it in collections, but there's very little chance of buying it chronologically. It's a real mess buying the 78 era stuff. Different labels, stuff was recorded at 2-4 songs at a time. And so anything on LPs is being culled together from various sessions, various years, sometimes 3-4 different labels. It's a different beast. But again, it's just people should dig into the other subjects as well. And it's not about me and my channel. It's about I want people to understand how broad this music was. How many important artists there were. How almost every sound you can imagine, mood you can dream of, seen in any film, there's jazz that fits that sound. And like a modern producer today could sit in the studio with his computers and his synthesizers and all of his effects and make an entire palette of sound. Jazz over the course of 40, 50 years does that same thing with real instruments. They go from dreary, drizzly ballads and blues to explosive, volcanic, lightning fast tempos rolling across a plain, to deep, melancholic blues, to the sorrow-filled songs of the fields, to the gospel-inflected, to the avant-garde edge and noise and sound and haunted house, to the romantic moments of love and life. Jazz literally has colors, shapes, and sounds from every aspect of life's moods, shapes, and colors. You could literally do anything in a film with jazz from different eras, different sounds that would fit that moment. It's that varied and that broad. And so it shouldn't just be reduced to the few things the modern collector knows about. There's so much great music in this art form that came out over such a long stretch of time that really touches on every aspect of life. And of course, I've spoken many times about the black musicians and the importance of their role and how they bring that soul-filled consciousness, the centuries of oppression to their emoting, and how it's given them this powerful link from their soul to speak a very powerful, liberating thing. And there's a lot of magic and power in that. And that has its own role to play in the power and importance of this music. But just the breadth and diversity of the sound of jazz, it's an impressive thing. To hear Clifford Brown do Cherokee and the thundering herd of buffalo that group kicks out, you can taste the dust cloud. Like, it's a serious tornado of sound. And you take some Cal Jader soul mamba, and all of a sudden you got pineapples dancing around your mouth. It's a luau. Then you have Ellington giving you some sophisticated boudoir elegance with the wonderful windswept curtains of lace and chandeliers of delight. To the fury of a Lee Morgan shaking you by the neck, grabbing you by the throat and saying, this cannot no longer be how things are going to be. To the bucolic intro to a Mingus record that descends into the chaos of an incredible car scene of galactic proportions, and then a strand of sound comes back out of it that returns us to melancholy and to harmony and melody. And then he'll again extract from that this incredible undulating wave of real dissonance and wonderful melodic sweet sound. To Monk sounding like a cat walking across a piano, giving you the feeling of a noir film in a New York alleyway with a fire escape and some black and white garbage cans and that whole mystery. Monk is a mystery. You don't know where he's going next. He probably hasn't even decided yet till he does it. To Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers being a thoroughfare of vehicles moving at sonic speed, challenging the laws of physics and gravity. To Parker exploding melody and dissecting the entire constraints of music theory and reinventing it all, yet still doing it within a melodic, tempo-enhanced setting that is mind-numbing chemistry and physics. How does a living being do what Parker does sometimes? It's mind-numbing. To a lovely Duke Pearson ballad that makes you want to lay in a triple-sized bed with a beautiful partner. I mean, jazz has endless vistas. Grant Green often puts you at the Black Church outside on a Sunday afternoon. We in our picnic dresses and suits. We got our nice gaiters on, and we got some potato salad, some tambourines, and we're going to get down with some food right now to celebrate the good times. You can find jazz to fit any moment. You can be camping along the side of the River Seine with a wonderful piece of pastry and a fabulous bow. You could be traveling down the Danube, going up the Mississippi. It just doesn't matter. From the Pacific to the Vistula, jazz has everything in its grasp and reach and can express the moments of life like few things can. So I encourage people take an interest in the subjects that are deeper than just the names you know. Because I guarantee you watch 3-4 episodes and dive deeper into names you don't know, you're going to find some names you love. You're going to be like, oh, that Hank Jones, that's alright, I dig that. Oh man, I really like me some Duke Pearson. Horace Parland's fantastic. You know what I mean? You're going to connect with some Bob Hutcherson, some Joe Henderson, some Wayne. You don't know. And so it's important that we dig past the surface. The record doesn't need to be spoken of too much. It's Grant Green. and you've heard it in the background. And like I said, Quebec's in great form on this. Sonny Clark, this is him in one of his more diminished settings. As I've said before in the past, Sonny Clark usually brings a militancy and a really charged environment to his records he's on. But by 62, he's near the end of his life. His addiction's really taken a hold on him. He looks pretty diminished there versus the militancy you see on Sonny Clark in 57, 58 on those sessions. He's probably pretty weak here. But anyway, it's a fantastic session. I'm glad it got reissued with a great cover. Nice glossy finish. They do a great job. They really do. And I don't want to ever have to debate that. You know. The other record I want to talk about today is a classic as well. For numerous reasons. Tommy Flanagan, Overseas. And I want to start with the album art. And if I'm not mistaken, that's Reed Miles. Doesn't say. I'm pretty sure this is a Reed Miles album cover. And if you catch the wordplay, Overseas, it's Tommy Flanagan over a bunch of the letter C. That's clever jazz graphic design. This is jazz being ahead of the curve. You could see this on a record today. That's how modern a lot of jazz graphic design is. One of the most expensive and rare prestige titles. It hasn't received a lot of reissuing. The Japanese have done it. I think this one might be European. Metronome. I think this is a European reissue, possibly German. This again is a very tough record to come by. The old prestige 7134s go for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I've seen some pretty exorbitant numbers on this one. It's a small little trio: Flanagan, Wilbur Little on the bass, and Alvin Jones on the drums. And Wilbur Little, I thought it was Wilbur Ware, but it's Wilbur Little. Sometimes I wonder if it was like a name for a different record label, but it seems like he was actually Wilbur Little, born in North Carolina. Anyway, it's a great set, and it's a nice example of a record that kind of lives up to its billing, although it's not a $700 record. Flanagan has a limited output as a leader, and this is one of his more sought-after titles as a leader. But Flanagan was immensely popular as a sideman, and his list of side work is pages long. His list of stuff as a leader is, not super expansive. He's a very creative player. He's got a lot of fire in him. He plays on Giant Steps, of course, where he's a little confounded, I think, by Coltrane's developments there. But Coltrane was redefining a lot of things, and at a pretty breakneck tempo, no less. But Flanagan's got a lot of blues in him. I believe he spent some time in Europe, which is probably partly why he doesn't have a lot of records here in America. I have to look that up. I can't remember if that's the case. I'm going to pause it, actually. Just looked at my book real quick. He does have a lot of releases in Europe in the 70s and 80s. It seems like his American recordings stop in 59. He does do a Moodsville trio setting in 65 or so, which he could have either come home for, or they could have recorded it over there even, I'm not sure. Or it could have been something from the vaults. I didn't look it up. But it seems like Flanagan must have gone to Europe in about 1960 and stayed there for a long time. Maybe 62, because he's on a lot of American recordings as a sideman still. But he's certainly in Europe for a long stretch, which always diminishes the guy's appeal and exposure in America. We forget you if you leave. Not very many guys get to come back like Dexter Gordon did and make a big splash. More often, Don Bias is what happens. You come back and everyone's like, who? Don what? I don't know Don Bias. Wrong number. Alvin Jones, is playing from a whole different place on this. The Thunderous guy that's playing with Coltrane isn't really present here. He's being small and diminished. No, this is a Japanese pressing. I just pulled that out of there. Absolutely Japanese pressing. Alvin's, of course, known for a lot of thunder, polyrhythms, and dynamics that are just explosive and could cut through the cacophony of Coltrane and just the bluster of Coltrane's incredible lung capacity. Alvin was right there with him. Jimmy and McCoy often are tougher to pick out. Alvin and Coltrane are always right there and just thundering down the road. But Willow Weep for me, Relaxing at Camarillo, Chelsea Village, Dollarina, Beats Up, Eclipso. There's a lot of fun tracks on here. It's absolutely something. If you owned a pastry shop, you could play this in the background, and it's not going to sound like easy listening fluff, but because it's not horns, it's going to be very beautiful and elegance. I'm into that word right now, elegance. It's just perfect stuff, and you're gonna have to search hard to find this record. I don't think it's been reissued recently by anybody. It's probably something that needs a good reissue, honestly. It's such an important, well sought after piece. It has such a great album cover to it. Sadly, there is a reissue of it out there that doesn't have the right cover. There's actually two of them. There's one of those European budget label, unlicensed labels, has a nice version of this out with a gatefold cover, some nice photographs, but doesn't have this. And to me, this is important. And then there's also an American reissue of this with also a different cover, which you just can't have the wrong cover, especially when the real cover is that cool. Again, there it is. Wilbur Littles is laying down a little groove. And Alvin's starting to get a little something in there. That's it. And that's the whole essence of black music, and especially, the groove. That's what it's about. And so we have that happening, and that's what's allowing Flanagan to put those little flurries of sound in there to flesh up the pocket with little items. The bass and drums are laying down the pocket, and it's inside the pocket where you can put things. And so they're putting that pocket out there, and Flanagan's dropping in little items. Store this in there for a little bit, have a little bit of that, and then it picks up into a bit more of a groove himself. It's just a great trio. Flanagan is great in almost any setting. He's a pretty diverse player, a pretty sought-after guy to arrange a session. He knows how to voice the different band members and put them in the right place. And then he just breaks off into a straight blues there. Great stuff. So, Tommy Flanagan Overseas, a record that probably needs to have a good Tone Poet-esque reissue. I don't think Tone Poet does prestige titles. I'm pretty sure they don't. Which somebody out there needs to redo it. And then, of course, the Born to Be Blue, great Grant Green stuff. But I can't say enough. Dig deep into the palette that is jazz. It's a sound box. It's filled with life's color, life's experiences, life's moments. And out there somewhere is the jazz that's going to scratch and fill your box. It's going to be exactly what, that's what I needed right now. And that's part of what it is for the avant-garde for me, is that itch for those moments, as I've gotten older, is fewer and farther between. When I was 24, the cacophony of a Pharoah Saunders record and the edge that it put me in, I didn't have a lot of stress and pressures in life. I didn't have kids in school. I didn't have bills to pay, car loans. I was living with some roommates, paying very little in utilities and rent. Being a musician, I had a lot less expectation on me. So taking a little bit more risk putting myself in a place of tense art seemed like it was more of a valued experience. But now I got enough tension, I got enough stress, I have enough responsibilities that the added tension of some sax player blowing his troubles of the world at me, I'm like, I got my own problems, brother. You know, maybe when I'm having a day that I need you, I'll put you on, but I just don't need to be in that headspace a whole ton. And that's kind of what I'm trying to express, is that there's music out there, jazz especially, that will fit every mood and every color. And if all your jazz is hard blowing, blustery, whatever, there's gonna come a day where you ain't in the mood for that. What are you gonna put on then? You know, you can't limit your jazz to just one chapter, one sound. And it's such a daunting thing trying to grasp jazz. It's so big and so broad. And that's part of what this channel is supposed to be here to do, is give you an honest review of sound, feeling, the political, economic, social climate the music was made in. I'm not going to pull punches. I'm not going to try to sell you something. I'm not going to be worried about someone trying to how it's going to affect my channel financially. It's just not how I want to approach this. I want to be an honest place of review. A guy who can tell you some honest history that might not always even be politically correct. We're going to talk race sometimes. We're going to talk bluntly sometimes about history that some people don't want to think about, but it can't always be swept under the carpet either. So again, thanks for being part of the channel and subscribing. There's great Jazz Shepherd merchandise available. There's also some JVC Jazz Vinyl Club Facebook group merchandise available at the channel. Check on the link below. Appreciate you all. Check out the Patreon if you want to support the channel. As little as $5 a month. We'll get you access to some fun extra bonus material. Y'all be safe. Let's beat this pandemic and get it over with, because this is getting too much. Y'all be safe. Talk to you soon. Peace.